Might work now. Nothing's easy, is it? Right, okay, now we can hear ourselves think. I've got to remember to stand still, because believe it or not, if I get one of these World of Tanks notices between me and the tower, it stops working. So, here we have a kuberwagon, and a German armoured car and a German half-track. And they're a reconnaissance unit, and as I say, we're fairly early in the first half of World War II, so they're still winning, or they think they are anyway. They're obviously not expecting any trouble because they've got a soft skin at the front of the patrol. Now, if it were me, I'd put the armoured car on point. I really would. But anyway, they're obviously happy that they're not going to bump into any serious resistance. So they're just scoping the arena out and having a little look around. Now, we've got to suspend disbelief a little bit and so forth for this exercise because this is an open arena. So you have to imagine and there's a little bit of cover for them to use, and so forth. But they're on a recce trip. Now there will be a wireless in the half track, but at this stage of the war, there weren't really walkie-talkies. There were field telephones, but you had to lay a wire for that. But they would have had wireless communication in the half track. And their job is just to move into unknown country, give the enemy a prod, see how hard he prods back. And during the early war battles, they could move very, very fast because the Allied armies were really geared up for World War I still. The BEF went to France ready for a static war. The Americans, when they joined in, were really still equipped largely with First World War style equipment. Although they were wearing World War II uniforms, they were still using Springfield rifles right at the Germans setting up a machine gun and just a hose pipe for bullets. It's got an incredibly high cyclic rate. When you hear that fire, it really does squirt. British veterans would have called that a Spandau. By the end of the war, the Americans were calling it a buzzsaw. Oh dear, maybe we've got an officer with a map. This is scary. We're here, or maybe we're here. The enemy might be over there. No, I'm pulling their legs and I shouldn't be really. The thing was that they'd had quite a lot of practice in Spain before World War II, so the Germans were really were a lot more ready for war than we were, or the Americans. So they've decided where they are, and they obviously think they're going to get an Allied unit coming in onto them. They're waiting for something. Here we have a Stuart tank. Now, I got it wrong yesterday. I thought this was a later model and would have had twin Cadillac engines, but it hasn't. It's an early one with a radial. They're a nice little tank, but they weren't really up to the job. And here we have the Americans. They're still fighting a World War I style battle. They're still walking along behind the tank and the half track. They don't really have good comms with higher formations. And the Germans are just watching. They're over there. Now the Germans won't fire until they're sure of a target, and they obviously don't want to be seen at the moment. German battle doctrine said you didn't shoot unless you actually had a target you could hit. They didn't really do covering fire in quite the same way that Allied armies do. absolutely lovely. So the Americans still moving into the area, the Germans still watching. Watch and wait. Oh, looks like they've hit the half track. The Americans have realised that they've got some enemy present. So the Americans trying to find a safe position. But they haven't got very much in the way of support. They are an infantry section. There is a tank, but it's not really a heavy enough tank. And the Germans, of course, will be on the blower, up to a high formation, ready to call in artillery support, or even air support, because they were able, from the field unit, to be able to call in Stukas direct to the Luftwaffe, even at the very early stages of the war. The Allies didn't really get to that stage until 1944 with the Typhoon cab ranks. So the Germans are now being shelled from, the Americans are now being shelled from a long distance because the Germans have called in artillery support. And the German mechanised infantry are getting ready to deploy their anti-tank gun and deal with the Stuart. It takes a long time for the Americans to actually call in support. They're going to have to send a dispatch rider or a runner. Because they won't have had time to lay in telephone lines to their position. They really need those walkie-talkies that they had later in the war. So the Germans deploying their anti-tank gun. And they'll move the half-track off the gun position and allow the Spandau in the back of the half-track to give covering fire if necessary. The poor old Americans really are just waiting for help whilst being shelled. Not a good place to be. Germans just putting down just enough fire to keep their heads down. And the Germans will wait for their Stukas or heavy artillery to finish the job off. We've got an American support unit coming in with a dingo armoured car in front of it, so the British are helping. Those scout cars not really going to help much in this situation. It's only got a Bren gun on it. It's not very heavily armoured. No match even for that German armoured car.
This is expensive. I know expensive.
Yeah.
So they're bringing the Stuart forward to try and support the infantry. But as I said, the Stuart wasn't really any match for German anti-tank guns. Here's the ace in the hole, the Panzer III. Germans have called up a tank to support them. And really that was way ahead of the Stuart at the time. He's obviously really not scared. Right on top of that hull, not even hull down. And the Stuart's been hit. German mechanised infantry going in to finish the job off. They will deploy, and without real serious support, the American infantry are going to have to retire. And this is really the way Blitzkrieg works. The Germans were really all out at the start of the war. Their tactics were just way ahead of anything the Allies knew. Now listen to the cyclic rate of that MG42. That delivered so many rounds so quickly.
Oh, grenade.
Looks like he's having some trouble with it now.
He's just throwing a grenade. Bomb. He's throwing it out. He's got another one. He's just throwing another one.
And the Americans using the tactical withdrawal out of the arena. Doesn't quite come under the bracket of down tools and starter, but they've had to withdraw.
How many Iron Mans have
They just couldn't call in support fast enough.
you? One. So did you get these with the Iron Mans?
What?
Did you get these?
And there we have it. The early part of the war, the Germans were just all over it, and really without good comms and good support, our American friends got overrun. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That was the early war battle.